Hey there, it's me Eden. Welcome to Eden's Crossdressing Stories. Today I'm going to share with you cross-dressing story called Parents and Shop Owner Feminized Me, Part 4. So, if you're new to the channel, then please consider subscribing to get a new story every day. And please support my work on Patreon and get early access of the content. Patreon.com/Eden07. Link in the comment, thanks. At dinner, when I walked into the room, Dad sputtered a bit when he saw me. His eyes went from my sneakers, up my legs to my white shorts, clearly defining a feminine front, over the tight shell top to my breasts, my face, and then my hair. He saw that I had nice nails, a smile on my face, and his determination to make me dress like this, as punishment, died. I saw it on his face just like Mom did, but it was she that spoke up. Andrea has become our daughter now. In our efforts to punish her, we let her become the girl she always was. He saw the small cameo and that very special ring, and knew that my mother had helped me make that decision. I sat there waiting as his mind swallowed the fact that his son, me, had given up manhood to become a woman. In his mind, women were subservient to males. In my mind I was equal, maybe even better than the average male. Like Mom had told me, I had the advantage of being both male and female, the clothing I wore doing nothing to diminish either my ability nor my intelligence. I had it all now, and I wasn't about to concede it to a lifelong bias of my father. Does this mean you will be dressing this way from now on? I nodded my head yes, and his eyes narrowed. You're not a girl, you're a boy. No. He looked at Mom. We might as well get this in the open once and for all. Andrea is here to stay. She is our daughter, still our child. I have talked to her and I believe this is right for her, and for us. Dad said nothing more, but his face was contorted in frustration and his own fears. On Saturday morning I was at the shop early. Vera complimented me on my hair, then told me we were going to start selling bridal and prom dresses. It's a big market, and with 6 high schools in the area we should do a huge business. I was listening to her as I kept one eye on a customer. I want you to model some of the dresses so I can have pictures taken to hang in the store. Me. You wear a 10, which is the average size of the dresses we sell. Besides, I can hardly wait to see you in some of those bridal gowns. Still shocked that she wanted me to be her model, I went about my work without mentioning it. During a lull, I told her I was invited to a party the next day, saying I was told it was casual. I have the perfect dress for you, Andrea. She jumped up, coming back with what she called the perfect LBD. LBD. Little black dress. Go try it on. I took it and slipped into the back. The dress was a chemise. Square-cut neckline with 2 thin shoulder straps, it fit like it was made for me. The hem was at mid-thigh. I saw Vera looking at me, smiling as she went back out front. I put it back in the bag and set it by my purse. Of course I would wear it. In the morning I had Mom help me with the hair removal cream again. Once I washed it off I sat in a bubble bath, scented of course, letting the oil in the water soak into my skin. As I dried off I looked in the mirror. From my waist up I looked like a girl. My hips were still skinny, and of course I had a major defect in my presentation of a female. Limp, it hung there mocking me, reminding me of my true status. I had read a story once where the heroine had used tape to hide her manhood, so I wrapped a robe around myself and went looking for tape. I found a roll of flesh-colored wrapping and some medical tape, took them, and went back to my bedroom. Now all I had to do was manage to use it to look like a girl. It took me an hour, but I did it. I had pushed my testicles back into my body, using the wrapping from my waist through my groin and up the back, split, and with a wrap around my waist to hold it and a small opening so I could pee. I had managed to make myself smooth in front. I wore the best bra I had. It had demi-cups, lace trimmed with a front hook. As I sat at my small homemade vanity, I put on the foundation, then powder, brushing away the excess. I used soft green with gray and plum highlights, black eyeliner both over and under each eye, black mascara and peach blusher. I slipped the dress over my head, zipped it up and stepped into the black heels, put gold earrings on, the cameo around my neck and stood back. Sexied, I thought. The red lipstick, then perfume. I grabbed the black purse, checked my hair which was fine, and went to find Mom. She looked at me for a moment before she spoke. Hunting? Of course not. This is just a party. If you say so. Can I use the car? She found her keys and I was on my way. Janet lived across town, in a nice, middle-class neighborhood. I parked out front and walked to the door, hoping for the best, still fearing the worst. When Janet opened the door, she squealed and hugged me. You look fantastic. I took her hand as I was introduced to her family, as Andrea of course, then she and I went out on the patio. There were 7 other kids there. 4 boys, and now with me, 4 girls. Janet handed me a soda and I sat at one of the tables, alone. 5 minutes later Janet showed up with a boy. Andrea, this is Stephen. He goes to school at St. Mike's. I've known him all my life, so I'm pretty sure he doesn't bite, but watch him anyway. I put on my best smile as Stephen sat down, and Janet left me alone with him. Janet says that you're a very special girl. What makes you so special? I have a lot of friends. I'll bet you do. Most of the male population at your school, I'll bet. Not really, Stephen. I'm not special. Just different. He was taller than I am in heels, with dark curly hair, coal black eyes and a wicked smile. Almost at once I liked him and didn't want to hurt him. Looking at him, I dearly wanted to be a real girl, but my inner voice was yelling at me to tell him the truth. After all, it was hardly a secret now, was it? I'm special because I'm not a real girl. I will be someday, but not now. I let it hang there between us, waiting for him to politely leave me alone once again. You're still very pretty, Andrea. Janet told me she had someone for me to meet, and I'm very glad it's you. He sat back and looked at me. Janet has been trying to set me up for years. I think I've met all of her friends so far, but none of them clicked with me. Looking like he does, I didn't think, and could not imagine, that he had any trouble finding a date, so I asked him why Janet was always setting him up. She doesn't like my choice of careers. I have always wanted to be a missionary. What's wrong with that? It's good work. I know that, but as soon as I mention it, all of those other girls drift away. All of my family are policemen, and they, and Janet, think that is almost the same thing and want me to be a cop. My mind instantly flew back to the sergeant that was so kind to me. They might be right, Stephen. I had a chance to meet a police sergeant not too long ago and he saved my life, literally. You. What? You're the one my dad was talking about. It was all I could do to keep my head up. Dad said that you would be beautiful given time, and he was right. He reached out and touched my hand and a shiver went up my back as something like an electric shock went through me. Want to dance? Stephen the first never. He pulled me to my feet and into his arms. My breasts were pushing against him as we moved around the patio to the gentle, slow music. Food was served and as we ate, Stephen sat next to me, Janet and Fred across from us. You two looked very cozy while you were dancing. Janet was smiling at me when I felt his hand on my leg, a gentle squeeze on my thigh. Andrea is pretty and a good dancer. Why shouldn't we be good together? Fred sat back, his arm touching Janet's shoulder. Why don't you take her to the prom? It's 3 weeks away and I know you don't have a date yet. I agree. You two belong together. Stephen looked at me with a question on his face. I nodded my head yes, watching him smile as I did. This is great. Can you get a dress by then? Janet, I work in a dress shop. Of course I can get a dress. Stephen and I exchanged numbers, danced several more times, and at around 7 I went home. Dad motioned to me as soon as I walked in the house and I sat across from him. This is true? When your debt is paid you are going to continue to dress as a girl? Yes, Dad. Thanks to you I have discovered what I always knew. I met someone today and he's taking me to the prom. My friends have accepted me the way I am, and I'm happier than ever before. I just can't go back to the way I was before. I had hoped that going to the prom would have slipped by, but he caught it. You have a date for the prom. What have you done? You're not a girl. He knew that before he asked me, Dad, and I'm going. This conversation was rapidly getting out of hand and I stood up. Sit down. Dad. Listen to me. I am what I am. Nothing more, nothing less. I am a girl, inside where it counts, and I'm not going to deny that anymore. You didn't make me this way, I was always this way. I've known for years that I wanted to be a girl and now I am. You can't make it go away, change it or anything else. You can make me wear male clothes, but I promise you that I'll be back in a dress the minute I turn 18. I spun on my tiny heels and went to my room, unsure of what he was going to do. 2 minutes later Mom was in my room. Your father doesn't understand Andrea. No matter how he looks at it, he just doesn't get it, and he doesn't have a shred of a clue. He hates me, Mom. No. He's scared for you, and confused. Give him some time. Every time he looks at me I feel like he's undressing me, Mom. He might be. He's trying to figure out how you can be so pretty. Your father isn't stupid, Andrea, but he comes from a place where boys are boys and girls are girls, and there isn't any confusion about it, and now you've raised his confusion bar too high for him. He wants me to change back to mom, and I won't. Not now, not after I finally figured it out. I know, dear. Mom helped me get undressed, then, as I pulled on my nightgown, she asked me about Stephen. I described him, telling her how Janet set it up, and that the police sergeant that caught me was his father. Small world, isn't it? I was stepping into my slippers when she told me I should talk to Dad. He loves you and you know it, and having you wear dresses is entirely different from dating. You hurt him down there, on purpose I think, and that was wrong. I stood there as Mom took my hand and told me to go back and talk to him. It will do you both some good, Andrea. Facing Dad again so soon was going to be hard, very hard. I was wearing a floor-length flannel nightgown, almost the least sexy thing I owned when I walked in to see Dad. He looked at me as I stood there, until I went to him, then sat on his lap. His arms went around me and I let my head fall to lay against his. I've been married for 22 years and I still don't know the first thing about women. Now, all at once, you want me to instantly understand you. It's easy, Dad. I'm the same person. I like the same things, like hockey and tennis. All I want is for you to treat me the same. I dress differently now, but that doesn't change anything, does it? His face never changed, but his arm around me seemed a bit tighter. You'll have new rules, and you'll follow them. No dates unless I meet the boy. No really short dresses, and you'll start cleaning the house with your mother. He had conceded to the obvious. Not all the way, but enough for me. I kissed him on the cheek and stood up. I want to meet this Stephen before the prom, Andrea. I went back to my room, elated and scared. I had made a commitment that I now had to live up to. Could I find the strength to do it? From that moment on, I was Andrea, but with a birth defect. I selected my dress for the prom and Vera altered it to fit. Stephen and Dad hit it off right away, and my friends drifted back to me. The Friday before the prom I had to deliver a speech in oratory. For my subject I chose myself. Wouldn't you? As the class listened, they heard my fears and anguish come to life, felt the emotional roller coaster I had been on as I described it to them in detail, my father's denial of my reality, and then, the resulting acceptance. They fell silent as I told them the entire story, including the bigotry and bias I felt every time I set foot in school. How I came to understand that I really was a girl, but with a defect. My defect didn't make me stupid, or flighty, or even less of a person. It simply existed. When I concluded, and sat down, the room was like a tomb in its silence. I wondered if I had gone too far. Fred, the one that confronted me that first day, telling me I was starting to swish, stood up, walked over to me, took my hand in his and pulled me to my feet. This is my friend. Her name is Andrea. The entire room erupted in clapping and yelling, and I became speechless. As I stood there, all of the students came and hugged me or shook my hand. The teacher was on the phone as I left the room. I left for my next class, unaware of the impact I had that day, with so few words. The next morning Mom and I had our hair done, my nails were touched up, and we stopped by the shop so I could try on and pick up my dress. I had the shoes and jewelry at home, so when we arrived, I set about making myself beautiful. Most men do not know that women plan a date like this as if it were D-Day, and I was no exception. I made sure I had everything, then sank into the bubble bath. I had bought white satin panties and a corselet, and put them on. As I pulled the laces tight and my waist shrank, I smiled to myself. This one garment was the epitome of being feminine. Men liked us to wear them, but had no use for them other than for us to wear them and drive their fantasies. The white satin and pink lace garment held me in place, pushing my own breasts up, together, and out. Wearing the corselet during the times I had tried on the dress, I found that my own flesh had been pushed up and I almost filled the cups, so, using small foam pads, I completed filling the cups. The result was I had my own breasts now. They were small, but all mine. My hose were nude and I clipped them to the garter tabs, pulling out the slack. I called Mom and she helped me get the dress over my head and smoothed it out, zipping it up. It was a sheath, all white with clear sequins on it. Low cut, with a back that was barely above my corselet, a hem that was just above my knees, and shimmering the way it does, I knew I had it all now. Stephen was impressive in his tuxedo, and Dad took some pictures of us before we left. As we walked into the hall, all eyes fell on us and the lights went dark. Suddenly a small spotlight clicked on, centering on us. From the dark came a voice that I knew. "Ladies and gentlemen, I present to you my friend Andrea Michael Grant and her escort Stephen James Banks." Applause broke out as the lights went back on. As we looked around, we saw that everyone was standing. Janet walked up to us with Fred. "Come with us, please." We followed them to the front of the assembly and were seated at the head table. Fred and Janet climbed the stairs to the microphone, and as the group fell silent, he started to speak. "My friends, we have had the privilege of watching a birth, not of a baby, but a woman. Our friend and classmate braved the laughter and snide remarks, the loneliness and despair none of us have ever had to face. Even I was confused at first. I'm going to play a tape that I want all of you to listen to very carefully. Listen and be proud." His hand found the button and my voice filled the hall, clear as a bell. It was my speech from my oratory class. Once again I had to relive the torment of those days as I groped to find my way. Nobody made a sound as my voice, sometimes sounding angry, sometimes pleading, sometimes emotional, described what was happening to me. It lasted for 22 minutes. 22 minutes of poised calm on my part, covering a nervous twitch I was beginning to feel. As the tape ended and Fred once again stood at the mic, the room stood silent. Any questions? The room, at first silent, erupted in applause and Stephen took my hand in his. He walked me to the center of the room, and as the music started, he pulled me close and held me tight. That went well, I think. I was unable to speak. They understand you better now. Relax and enjoy the night. I felt his warm breath on my neck, his hand firm on my back, and knew he was right. That night, for the first time, I kissed another male, and it wasn't wrong at all. Stephen had helped me complete my journey with that kiss. That night and forever after I will remember that kiss. My acceptance by my friends was wonderful, but when his lips gently pressed against mine for the first time, I had become the woman I wanted to be. How does this all end? I don't know. I still work at the shop, my pictures all over the place as I pose in wedding dresses. Dad has become protective, almost smothering lately, and Mom certainly likes having a daughter. My doctor has also helped me a lot, and by the time I graduate I'll have hips and boobs of my own. This adventure did not start with that break-in. It started long ago in my mind, the moment I thought about myself dressed as a girl. All I did was admit it, then walk through that door into the realm of possibilities. That's all for now. See you in the next video, till then take care. Oh yes, next part of this series will be published soon. So, please subscribe to my channel. And to get early access of the content, visit my Patreon page. patreon.com/Eden07. Link in the comment and description.